Hello and welcome to this special broadcast on WION. It isn't often that you get the chance to sit across from a tennis Hall of Famer, but I'm absolutely privileged to be joined by someone whose life story is just as inspiring as her tennis achievements. She won 4 Grand Slam titles for the record, 2 in the singles, 2 in the doubles, and her big-hitting, powerful style paved the way for a new era in women's tennis. Mary Pierce, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
You're here, of course, as an ambassador for Roland Garros, the French Open. Can you believe it'll almost be 20 years this year since you beat Conchita Martinez and won the title?
No, I cannot believe it. It's incredible. I'm very proud and I'm very excited to say that I'm still the last French player, male or female, to have won the French Open. But 20 years, I can't believe it. It's just flown by. Felt like it was yesterday.
You were, of course, born in Canada. You lived in America for a long period of time. But France is the country that you chose to represent in your tennis career. So clearly there's a connection there. Did that make the French Open the tournament that you desperately wanted to win?
Yes, well, definitely. Growing up, and when I moved to France when I was 13 and playing tennis, in that moment when my father, decided that I'd be playing for France because they were there and helped me when I needed the support at that time, that I'd be loyal to that country. Growing up there and watching tennis on TV, and of course the French Open was the home Grand Slam, and so that was the dream to one day play that tournament. And obviously my ultimate dream and goal in tennis was to win Roland Garros singles one day.
And it wasn't just the singles. It's nice that you say that, because in the year 2000 it was a bumper year. You won the doubles as well with Martina Hingis, who you also beat in the semi-finals on the way to reaching the final. I wonder what that dynamic was like around that match, because obviously both the draws were taking place simultaneously.
Well, yes, exactly. So Martina Hingis and I played doubles for the year. We had made the finals of the Australian Open already previously, and so being good friends and playing together, and then having to play each other in the semifinals was very difficult, because then we had to go on the court afterwards and play doubles together. So someone was going to win, someone was going to lose, but we knew that we were friends off the court no matter what was going to happen on the court. That, I know that she wants to win, she's going to try to beat me. She knows that I'm going to try to beat her, so there's no hard feelings, we don't take anything personal. But it was an incredible battle. We were both cramping at the end of that singles match, and I just, came through in 3 sets. And then we went on to win the doubles at Roland Garros, and that was just a bonus, really unexpected, and it just made that Roland Garros 2000 even more special.
You, of course, won your first Grand Slam title in '95 at the Australian Open. So by the time the year 2000 came along, it had been a few years of trying to do that once again, but maybe just falling short a little bit. Was there a point of time during those couple of weeks in Paris that you felt like this was your year, that it was going to happen at this tournament?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, because my first round at Roland Garros 2000, I remember winning it on center court, and right after the match, just before walking off the court, it's like I had this special feeling inside, and it was like this little voice that was kind of saying, maybe this could be the year. And I thought, okay, never had that feeling or that thought before. And I said, well, let me just keep that to myself. I didn't say it to anybody. And I just kept going about my business every day and for those 2 weeks and match by match, and then ended up being my year.
I want to go back, I want us to take a break here, because I want us to go back in time and then circle back to this point, because it's important, I think, to point out that you started playing tennis very late. At the age of 10, you were not a prodigy in that sense, but you were a natural. Can you sort of talk to us about what made you pick up a tennis racket?
Yes, so I started playing tennis at 10 years old. I was in Florida, which is late compared to all the other kids. You usually start around 3, 5, 7. And it was just really a friend in school, and that I used to spend a lot of time with, and she played tennis. She was a good junior player in Florida, and just one day after school, I accompanied her to her tennis lesson because I was going to wait for her. We would do our homework together, and I was just watching, and someone asked if I wanted to join, and I said sure. And they gave me a racket. I went out onto the court, and I changed courts about 2 or 3 times. And when I finished, after about maybe 45 minutes, I ended up on a court with kids that were serving and playing points. And I had no clue what to do. I was just watching all the others and trying to copy them. And when it finished, a gentleman came to me and he says, "Hi, my name is Kevin. I'm the head pro here of the club. and I've never seen you before. What's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? And how long have you been playing? I said, well, my name is Mary. I'm Rachel's friend. I'm 10 years old. I'm from here, and I've been playing about 45 minutes. And he says, no, but how many years? I said, well, it's my first day. And he said, okay, I want you to come back tomorrow with your parents. I said, okay. So I ran off to my friend. I said, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I have to come back with my parents tomorrow. Came back the next day, and can still see my parents standing there talking to the coach and waiting, what's going to happen. And they came to me and they said, okay, Mary, you're going to start to play tennis, 3 times a week after school. And that's how I started.
It was just 4 years later that you would turn professional, which I think is the most remarkable thing about this story, which means that in those 4 years, your life changed dramatically, didn't it? It became consumed by tennis. How difficult was it as a preteen, barely a preteen, to come to terms with these big changes in your life?
Yes, well, my first year of playing tennis, I probably played 3 times a week after school, and then I played on the weekends. My dad would take me with a huge basket of balls and just feed me all day long, balls on the weekend. And second year, I probably played every day after school. Third year, even more. And then at 13 years old, my father took me out of school. I continued through correspondence courses, and I basically played like all day long. I was probably training at least 8 hours a day, hitting hundreds and thousands of balls, and it was difficult. I was sad when I was taken out of school because I loved school, and I actually wanted to be a pediatrician. That was my plan before I even started playing tennis. And then moving to France was also very difficult because I didn't speak French, and I had to learn French at 13. And it was difficult to make friends and have other friends to play with. So the transition was very hard, and it was very difficult. And then starting on the Pro Tour at 14, which I actually could have played on the Pro Tour at 13, but there's a rule on the WTA Tour, the minimum age is 14, so I had to wait a year. And started competing on the Pro Tour at 14, which was a total life change, because now you're traveling every week to a different city, a different country, and an adult world all of a sudden, so it was not easy at all.
Gone on the record to say that those first few years, maybe up until you were 18 years of age, was the worst time of your life. And perhaps a large part of it was to do with the difficult relationship that you had with your late father, who, if I may say so, pushed you in ways that you did not want to be pushed. He was your coach as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what led to you severing ties with him around then, I think, when you were 18?
Yes, so my dad was my coach, and I had other coaches that he would let come in coach me from time to time, but he was the one who was always coaching me until I was 18. And yeah, it was hard, to say the least. He was really mean. He could be at times. Very mean, very hard, abusive, verbally, physically. Growing up playing tennis from 10 to 18, I'd have to say yes, those were the hardest years of my life that I've ever been through, the most painful in many ways. And I ended up fearing my father, so pretty much living in fear every day, and ending up hating him, because he was horrible to me and many times. And so I couldn't wait to be 18. So then I thought, okay, well, when I'm 18, I'm out of here. And then no one's going to tell me what to do. I can do whatever I want. And that's exactly what happened. So when I turned 18, through circumstances that made it possible, ended up leaving my family, basically, my parents divorcing, and had a restraining order from my father. And I didn't see him for 2 years, basically. So, and for me, at that point, when I left at 18, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm never going to see my dad again. I had no reason to. And then 2 years later, I won my first Grand Slam tournament in Melbourne in '95, and I thought to myself, well, okay, my dad did train me for many years, and he does have a part in this, and I should at least show him my trophy. So I met my father and his wife, because he remarried, in a very public place, in a big hotel lobby where there was a lot of people, and so I felt safe. And it was just 5 minutes, and I just showed him my trophy, and he was happy to see it, and I thanked him for what he, the part that he had in it. And yeah, and that was pretty much it. So for me then, I wasn't going to see him again until, something really special happened in my life. A few years later, when I was 25 years old, I became a born-again Christian, and that's where everything changed for me. You know, my heart, my life, me as a person, and I was able to forgive my father, which was a miracle, which I would have never ever done, like that's for sure. And I was able to forgive my dad, and the Lord really just restored my heart and restored our relationship and gave me a new heart and a new life and a new love for my father that I'd never had and that I probably would have never had, and was able to enjoy a father-daughter relationship from then on.
I have a quote here from the great Chris Evert about you. This appeared in a piece in the New York Times, I believe it was last year. She says, "For a long time, Mary was a shy, introverted, vulnerable young girl. Tennis was her outlet, and the fire burned within her because her life was so miserable off the court. Tennis allowed her to focus and get away from all her troubles." Would you call that a fair reflection?
No, which is very common in many people's lives. But for me, tennis was more imposed upon me from 10 to 18. I didn't feel like I could say no, that I couldn't stop, basically. And then at 18, when I left my family, I took a break. And I said, okay, well, now I'm going to do whatever I want to do. What do I want to do? And I lived at a friend's house for about 3 months, and I pretty much did whatever I felt like doing. And I was like, what do I want to do? Do I want to keep playing tennis? Do I want to go to school and study? Do I just want to get a job? And 3 months later, I felt and thought, okay, I think I'll continue playing tennis. And that's when I contacted Nick Bollettieri and asked him to coach me. And he kind of took a role as a second father. And then I feel like that was where it became my decision where I wanted to play tennis. And worked very, very, very hard to be the best that I could possibly be. And then at 25, when I became a Christian, I understood and saw and realized that it was God that gave me the gift to play tennis, that it was His plan for my life, because I could play tennis from the first day like kids had been playing for years. And so then I understood that, like I said, God gave me the gift to play, and then I wanted to do my best for Him.
1994 was a big year for you, first Grand Slam final at the French Open, and what a run to the title you had. I think it was 10 games that you lost. You thrashed world number one Steffi Graf in the semis as well. Was that the tournament where you felt perhaps for the first time that you belonged on the big stage?
I think there were probably moments before that when I played maybe in the Australian Open and I lost to Gabriela Sabatini, even though I had set point in the first set. I felt like I could start to play with the top players and be at the top level. But definitely the 1994 French Open, I think maybe it was some of the best tennis I played in my whole career. It was just golden, like the whole time. I was winning my matches so easily. I have the record of the least games lost up until the finals, I think it is. And everything was just perfect. And I was beating all the players. And to beat Steffi Graf so easily was absolutely incredible. It was probably the best match of my career.
You lost, of course, to Arantxa Sanchez in that final, but you'd have your revenge very soon at the Australian Open in 95. In fact, what a spectacular way it was to win your first Grand Slam title, because you beat the world number one and the world number two players in the semis and the finals.
Yes. You know, sad that I lost the French Open 94 finals because I was playing Arantxa and I felt always very confident playing Arantxa as a player, and I had beaten her just a month or two before on clay in America, and so I was very confident. I was just too nervous in that finals, but it helped me for the 6-8 months later when I made my next Grand Slam final at the Australian Open, and you know, nothing takes the place of experience. So that final that I lost helped me to win the final in Australia. So that was an incredible moment, and then your life just completely changes once you win a Grand Slam title.
So now we can come back to the year 2000, because you had a few years in between 95 and 2000, again similar years where you're trying to win there. You've made a couple of finals. You haven't managed to win a title. But just before the French Open, you mentioned, of course, that you became a Christian that year, and that was a big change in your life. There was another big change. You started, I believe, speaking to your father again, hitting balls with him again. These are two things that would have a big role to play in your life going forward.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, is when I became a Christian in March of 2000. So that was basically 2-3 months before the French Open. And it was just so evident that I changed. You know, I got to the French Open and the journalists were all asking me questions like, wow, Mary, you look so different. You seem so much more at peace. You don't get so mad on the court. And important points, you look so relaxed. What have you done? Are you doing some kind of mental training? Or what is that? I was like, no, you know, I've just given my life to Jesus and God is in control of everything. I don't have to worry about anything. I just come on the court and give 100%, enjoy, and whatever happens, happens. If I win, great. If I lose, I learn and I keep going. And it just took all the pressure and all the stress of competing and playing tennis, and especially at Roland Garros, because that was the tournament for, you know, as a French player, it's the toughest one to play because you've got all the attention and all the expectations of the whole country riding on your shoulders, and you want to do so well. And it was always so difficult, you know, as a French player to play that tournament. And I just arrived that year completely different and changed and just so much more relaxed and at peace, and I was able to handle all those expectations and pressure that year.
You had, you know, another few up and down years after that, but it was in 2005 that you really became a household name here in India because you won Wimbledon with Mahesh Bhupathi. I wonder, how do you look back on that partnership? Is it a fond memory?
Yes, totally. I had been wanting to play mixed doubles with Mahesh, but he wasn't available, and I always loved playing doubles and mixed doubles, and the opportunity came that he was available and free to play with, and I jumped on it because he's such a great champion and an incredible player, and I was just really privileged and honored to be able to play mixed doubles with him and at Wimbledon, and I just had so much fun playing with Mahesh. He's such a great gentleman. And an amazing tennis player. I would remember being on the court playing our matches, and he'd hit some incredible shots, and I just look at him like, how did you do that? You know, but it was amazing, and I think that's one of the trophies that I'm most proud of. I remember that night putting it on my nightstand next to my bed and having it right there. I was just so proud of it.
You seem to have found a new wind that year because you also reached the US Open final in 2005. But then came the ACL injury the following year, and it would be the one that would end your career. I'm interested to know what it is that you think about that moment, because it wasn't an injury that anybody expected would be, career ending.
Well, it's interesting because when I was on the court and I injured my knee, and they were taking me off on the stretcher, and I remember the crowd applauding and putting my hand up and kind of waving like that, and I thought to myself, is this the kind of injury that ends a career? Because I'd never really hurt myself that badly before, and I wasn't too sure what I had done, but I knew it was really bad because it was very painful. And then I found out I could play again if I had surgery. I thought, okay, well, I'll have surgery. And my surgeon said that everything went great and that I'll be back on the courts in 4 to 6 months. And 6 months later, I still had pain. I couldn't do a full leg extension. It was a mystery to my surgeon, to the physios, to everyone around the world. They couldn't understand. And I tried for 2 years rehabbing and coming back, and wasn't possible. And I just figured, okay, Lord, well, if I'm not playing tennis, then there's a reason for that, and you must have something else for me. And so it's time to, move on to something else. And that's when I went to Mauritius and went there to visit a church and do some Bible school and courses that I had always wanted to do but didn't have the opportunity because I was playing on the tour before. And so it was just really time to move on to something else.
Okay, I have a couple of questions about more contemporary issues before I wrap this interview up. I'm sure you've been asked this a lot. We've seen a number of different Grand Slam champions in the women's game in recent years, and somehow there is a perception or a belief that the state of the game is unhealthy because there aren't rivalries or there aren't players that are dominating the game over extended periods of time. Do you agree with that, or do you see this as the most exciting state of women's tennis?
That's a really good question. I think because every week a tournament comes and you don't know who's going to win that tournament. So it could make it, definitely a lot more interesting to think like, okay, well, who's it going to be this week? Is it going to be Barty? Is it going to be Osaka? Is it going to be Halep? Is it going to be, Andreescu? I mean, who's it going to be? You just don't know. And I think people like to have someone that they can kind of hold on to or to cheer for, or someone that's dominating, or rivalries, And I think that's probably missing in women's tennis right now, is we don't have someone who's dominating. There was Serena, who was dominating, and now she's not dominating as much since she's been married and had a baby and trying to come back and reach her top level again. We don't have a rivalry right now, but I think that's going to come. I don't know who it's going to be, and I don't know when, but there's definitely the potential for that. And we've got a lot of really great players. They're young, and they haven't been able to be consistent yet once they've reached success. And I know what that's like, because once you win a Grand Slam tournament, your whole life changes, and then there's so much more expectation and attention and media and demands in your life off the court than there was before. And so there's a time of adaptation. And perhaps that is all worse now in the social media age? Well, and it's amplified even more now, of course, with all the social media and everything that's going on. So it's a lot to have to handle and to cope with and to deal with. So there's that time of adaptation. And then we'll see down the road who's going to be the one who's going to dominate, or who's going to, those rivalries. And we've got the potential for that in the future. You won 2 Fed Cup titles with France, I believe. It's a competition that was close to you. This year, of course, they're going the same route as the Men's Davis Cup and revamping it into a multi-team finals event. Are you a fan of this? I've played Fed Cup. I was selected at 15 years old the very first time, and for me it was an honor and a privilege, and it was every single time an honor and privilege to play for my country. I never asked, am I going to get paid? How much am I going to get paid? Are there points to help my ranking or not? Winning the Fed Cup 2 times is one of the best moments of my career, because it's a team event. Tennis is so individual, and it's very, very special moments. And unfortunately, the younger generation today, and I'm generalizing, don't see Fed Cup and Davis Cup the same way as my generation, the generations before, where it's just an honor and a privilege to play for your country. They want to know, how much money am I going to make, and are there any points for my ranking? You're like, wait a minute, this isn't about that. This is about representing your country. And so the problem that happened is then you stop having the top players playing Fed Cup and Davis Cup, or not as much. And then you get the sponsors, the TV, the fans, they're not happy, and the event starts to die. And you think, well, what are we going to do? And something needs to be done. So then you survey the players and say, okay, why are you not playing? What can we do to get you to play? They want money, they want points. We want to play in 1 week. Okay. Then generalizing again, Some want the home and away, but and so now you move the format and change it to what the players in general want. And then you've got other people that aren't happy. So how do you make everybody happy? Personally, as a tennis player, I'm a fan of the home and away ties, because you have the ambiance of playing at home or playing away, and it's amazing. The crowds, that's what it's all about. I've played where it's 1 week as a tournament and a draw in Frankfurt, Germany, Fed Cup, and you've got, 32 countries. I've done that before. I've played the home and away. I've played the fixed final where we've got 4 countries, playing in Moscow, and France is playing USA in Moscow. There's not many people there in the stands. I've played all different kinds of formats, so I know personally the home and away is the best experience as a player and for the fans. It is very difficult nowadays, because the calendars for the ATP and the WTA tours are so saturated. There's too many tournaments. I think there's been so many that have been coming. It's almost become like being greedy. There's so many tournaments now on the calendar. There's too much, and the players are tired. They don't want to play so much. That's why they want Davis Cup or Fed Cup to be in 1 week now. So it's very hard to make everybody happy. And what do you do for Davis Cup and Fed Cup? The solution would be less tournaments on the calendar.
But that would never happen.
Which would never happen, because then you're going to take business away from some tournaments that already exist. And then you keep Fed Cup and Davis Cup 2 or 3 times a year with the home and away ties. But now it is where it is. And so we're trying to find solutions to make Fed Cup and Davis Cup great again.
Okay. I have a final set of rapid fire questions before we end this. So about 5 Not more than 5 seconds, please. Thinking time for answers. And maybe a line just to explain your answer so that there's a little bit of context involved. Are you ready?
I'll try. Yes, okay.
All right. What's your favorite tennis memory?
Winning the French Open because it was my dream come true.
Okay, so that negates the next question, which was favorite career trophy. So that's out. Who was your toughest opponent?
Myself. Or Kimberly Poe and Amy Frazier, because they were like walls. They could get all my balls back and never made a mistake.
All right. Who was your best tennis friend? Somebody from on the tour.
Eva Maioli.
Okay. Who was your favorite player, man and woman, among those that are still active today?
Roger Federer.
And on the women's side?
Serena Williams.
Serena Williams. And bold predictions for the French Open?
Rafael Nadal. And for the women, I don't know.
But that's why we called it a bold prediction.
It's too open.
It's a Hail Mary.
Let's say Halep. I don't know.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for speaking to me, Mary. Okay. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.